Hello, parents of Chillicothe City School District. We, as the principals of the district, wanted to take the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Today we have with us primary principal Joanna Strasser, intermediate principal Josh Tripp, 712 principal myself, Matthew Valentine, and then our nurse, the district nurse, Natalie. So we're going to share some important information with you regarding the opening of school, and our intention to work through an agenda here that allows you to understand the ins and outs of the opening of our school for the 2020-2021 school year. So we're going to start with some information of general housekeeping information, followed by our nurse sharing some health and hygiene pieces with you, and then just general information of sanitization, transportation, and some of our online learning opportunities that you'll have if you choose not to come into the building. As most of you know, we will be starting school on August 10th, 2020, and we look forward to welcoming students back into the school. But if that's not something that you are able to do, we certainly have the online learning opportunities that we'll chat with you about here momentarily.
As we begin this year in our district, we are asking all parents to make sure that you keep your final forms updated. They have to be updated every school year. You can go onto the Chillicothe website, school district website, click on final forms and just update your current information. This is the place that we look to for mailing addresses and telephone numbers, so it's very important that this is updated. At K6, at the beginning of the school year, we will be sending out an activation code. It is very important that you sign up on Class Dojo. The teachers will send many messages through this system, as well as myself and Mr. Tripp. So we encourage you to make sure that you sign up for that activation code. All of the administration uses Facebook. You can see that there is listed all of our pages. We encourage you to follow each one of these depending on which building your child is at, as well as our city school district Facebook page. So make sure that you follow us on there, and we post and keep information updated daily and weekly.
All right, thanks for listening in with us today. My name is Natalie Harbert. I'm the school district school nurse. And today, especially as we get closer to our school reopening, I wanted to share with you some of the important aspects of hygiene and health that we'll be focusing on at school. These include assessing for symptoms, washing and sanitizing hands, thoroughly cleaning and sanitizing the school environment, practicing social distancing, and implementing the face covering policy. The health and safety of our students and staff is our top priority. So in collaboration with the state and local officials, we put many protocols in place to protect everyone's health and safety. With that being said, this will need to be a team effort, and we will need parents and caregivers to contribute to help keep your children safe while we navigate through the coming months. The key points I'm going to be addressing with you include assessing symptoms, the sick room, and the face coverings or mask policy. In regards to student health assessment, because COVID is highly contagious, it's extremely important for parents and caregivers to check their children daily for signs and symptoms before they come to school. This is extremely important. If your child has any of the following symptoms or has a temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, they should stay home. And I'm going to go ahead and review those if you can flip to that next screen. So COVID symptoms can range from mild to severe, and they can appear 2 to 14 days after you're exposed to the virus. These include newer onset fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or diarrhea. So it's also very important that you contact the school as soon as possible to make us aware of the absence, along with the symptoms that student is experiencing, and provide a callback number. The nurse or representative will likely call you back to obtain more information if it's needed, as well as giving you further instructions for your child's return to school. If your child is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, it's important for you to call your child's physician for appropriate evaluation and direction as well. Students who are ill, either absent due to illness or sent home due to illness, are not permitted to return to school until at least 72 hours after symptoms have subsided and are fever-free for 72 hours without fever-reducing medicine. The only exception is unless we receive documentation from that child's physician that says otherwise. We will also be assessing all students for signs and symptoms of illness when they come to school daily, and we'll monitor those students and staff for any signs of illness during the school day as well. If a student is experiencing illness and is suspected of having those COVID-19 symptoms while at school, the student will be immediately escorted to the clinic, the nurse clinic, for a more in-depth assessment by the nurse. The parent will be contacted with instructions for prompt pickup and referral to the child's physician for further evaluation and direction. And then the nurse or administrator will follow up with the student's parent or the staff member, if it's a staff member that has those symptoms, prior to returning to school. The student will be permitted to return with a doctor's note that clears them to return to school. And this is focusing on a student that has those COVID symptoms, and we end up sending them home or they're evaluated for that. If a positive case is identified in the school building, parents will be notified by district administrators, and the Ross County Health District will immediately step in and assist us with identifying and notifying all those who have been potentially exposed, along with further instructions regarding any quarantine measures for those involved. Each of our schools has a separate and designated room where ill students, it's called a sick room, where ill students will be placed for further evaluation by the nurse and for students to wait for parent pickup. This room will be monitored when the students are present. It's extremely important, and we kind of will reiterate this again and again. Please make sure that you have updated your contact information on each of your child's Final Forms account, and continue to update those changes anytime that occurs. We do not change contact information when you call into the school to let the secretary know. It's your responsibility as the parent or guardian to change the information on all of your student Final Forms accounts. Masks and face coverings. We know that the school setting poses a high risk for the spread of COVID in the community. And even though children are less likely to become severely ill, they can still spread the virus to other more vulnerable people, including other medically compromised students, staff, and their own family members. If you're exposed to COVID-19, quarantine measures can include a mandatory 14-day quarantine plus additional measures. If everyone is wearing a mask, it can dramatically reduce the likelihood of exposure and may eliminate any mandates for quarantine. We are now realizing how critical face coverings are to help prevent the spread of COVID from person to person. The reason is because they can reduce the spread of respiratory droplets, which is the main way that COVID is spread. Face coverings or masks will be required for all students in grades 3 through 12. Face shields and other barriers are being developed for use in K2. However, it's highly recommended that students in K through 2 wear masks as well. If your child or your children have medical needs that contradict the use of masks, or if your child needs other medical accommodations, please contact your building principal as soon as possible so we can discuss these needs with you and for you to obtain that prior approval to allow us time to decide how best to accommodate for those needs. Students who will not wear a mask or in the required buildings or in areas like buses and other areas that are required, those students should consider the online learning option. And then this is just a picture of, kind of shows the effect of wearing a mask versus not wearing a mask. The left, the guy with the red shirt actually has the COVID infection if he's not wearing a mask. Others that are wearing a mask can still get that infection, but there is some protection with you wearing a mask as well in relation to that. And then the bottom picture is the person that's infected wearing a mask along with the masks, somebody else wearing a mask that's not infected. So this kind of lets you know how those germs are spread and how much of an effect that masks have to help prevent this. So it's very important. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Some other pieces of information that may be useful for everybody. We've had many questions, but some general information that applies to everybody is that back to school night is canceled for all buildings K through 12. We will have an alternative back to school option, and you should be receiving that information via final forms in the upcoming weeks. Also, the district is purchasing supplies for all students, kindergarten through 6th grade. So that is one less thing that families need to worry about during these times. Book bags and packed lunches are permitted in the buildings, but the items that are brought to and from school should be limited and should only be the things that are required for the student's school day. We also have some new restrictions on visitors and volunteers in our buildings. We will not have those this year, and the office procedures that you are accustomed to will be changing as well. So unless it's absolutely necessary, parents and visitors won't be granted access to the office itself. We will be using our security system and our cameras to protect the safety of our secretaries and school staff by limiting the amount of people in our offices. So picking up your child will require your ID, and we will ask that you display that through the camera. You will then sign your child out in the vestibule in their respective buildings, and then either wait there or back outside until your child is released from school. The class lists for grades K through 6 and schedules for students 7 through 12 will be mailed to the address that is listed in final form, so make sure that that is up to date.
So just to share a little bit about general information regarding each building, each one of us is going to take the opportunity to share with you for each building what the different procedures will be. So we're going to start with Ms. Strasser at the primary building.
So at the primary building, breakfast and lunch will be in the classrooms this year. We've ate breakfast last year in the classroom, so we're adding lunch into the classroom this year. We also will not have a la carte options, so they won't have those 3 extra options that they've had to choose from in the past. At the primary building, we do not switch classes, so students will be in their classroom. We are putting in plexiglass on all the tables in our building. As many parents know, we have tables at the primary building, so each table will have plexiglass shields so that it creates an additional barrier and protection between the students. In each classroom, we will have sanitation stations. This will allow the teachers and students to wipe down their desk, wipe off chairs. When someone uses the sink in the classroom, they'll be able to wipe that down as well, and the door handles. Recess time at the primary building will be scheduled. It will be 1 classroom out at a time. This is different because in the past we took anywhere from 3 to 5 classes out at a time. We are changing that. We will not be able to use our playground equipment. However, we will be using the green space that is in the back of the building. I know many parents have asked questions about unified arts. We are having unified arts at the primary building. They will look different. The main change is that we will be having art and music in the classrooms. Typically, they would go to those rooms, but to eliminate as many transactions in the hallway, we are moving those into the classroom for this upcoming school year. Mr. Tripp?
Lunch and breakfast at the intermediate will look very similar to what Ms. Strasser just shared regarding the primary building. The a la carte options will not be available at the intermediate building either. However, if your child does have a medical condition, no matter what grade they're in, K through 12, that they have a food allergy or some sort of sensory issue with a food, we certainly will still accommodate that, and we would just need the appropriate documentation that would require us to provide that accommodation. You can obtain that information and documentation from your physician, who will share it with our school nurses, and we can provide those. Switching classes looks a little different at the 3-6 building as well. Depending on the grade, your child will either have 2 teachers or they would have 3 teachers, which would dictate the number of times that they will switch. So if they do switch classes throughout the day, what they will do is they will spray the sanitizer, on the table prior to their switch, and it will sit there until the next class comes in, at which time your child will have gone to a different class and find that the previous class had sanitized the desk as well. Your child will wipe down their desk so that they can ensure that it is clean and that they are ready to start learning in a clean environment. We have plexiglass shields as well. We have a variety of furniture in our building. Some classrooms have tables that allow for 4 children. Some have smaller tables, and some have individual desks. So depending on what that classroom looks like, if they do have a larger table, there will be no more than 2 children per table. And if they are sitting at those tables, we will have plexiglass shields between the students as well, just like the primary building did. We are in the process of installing many sanitization stations throughout the building with antibacterial pumps. Recess also will be limited at 3-6. 3 to 4 classes at a time will go out at a time rather than the entire grade level. And we will utilize the playground area where the buses usually park, as well as the green space that we have next to the football field. Unified arts, we will continue to have those. However, those will look a little differently. So they may have that unified arts class in their actual classroom rather than going to the library. They will most likely have the library come to them.
At the 712 building, lunch will be in 3 different locations throughout our facility. The gymnasiums at each end of the building, one being Hatton, one being the middle school gym, and then utilizing the cafeteria for 3 different lunch periods. This will allow us the opportunity to provide the social distancing of at least 6 feet, if not more, for each of the students. And students will be assigned a location for lunch based on where their class is prior to their lunch period. And so all lunches will be grab and go at the high school, middle school also, and we will not have the a la carte options as been mentioned by both of our previous principals. So the a la carte options will not be available, and students each morning in homeroom will indicate whether or not they plan to receive lunch or if they've packed their own lunch. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. As far as switching classes for the 712 building, we are going to have students receiving a schedule that has 8 periods identified on them. And what we will be doing is blocking those periods. So a student will have a class basically every other day for approximately 90 minutes each. And so we will have what we're going to call blue and white days. And blue days would be your odd days. So you'll have your periods 1, 3, 5, and 7, and your even days 2, 4, 6, and 8. And just as Mr. Tripp mentioned with switching classes, we will be doing the very similar process. As students finish up their class, they will go ahead and spray down the desks, leaving it damp, and then they will move on to their next class. Upon arriving in their next class, they will wipe down the desk that they're seated in to ensure that it's clean. The other precaution at the 712 building that we will have in effect is one-way hallways. So students will only be able to move one way in the hallway, which will allow us to continue to keep students continuing to move through the hallways and not have that opportunity to maybe run into somebody walking the opposite direction. All of our desks are pretty much individual, but in places where plexiglass is needed, we will definitely be utilizing that shield as well. Sanitization stations, as previously mentioned, will be throughout the building, specifically in each classroom and around restroom areas. And recess is not something that we have at the middle school, high school, so we should not need to worry about that. However, unified arts will happen in the same manner that's healthy and safety for all of our students. but each student will still have the opportunity to take unified arts. The one caveat that we're still working through would be that of the choral department and the band department, as we await studies to determine what is the best way to operate those departments. However, they will still have choral classes and band classes, just the type of teaching that occurs in there may be a little bit different than we're traditionally used to in those courses. We want to take an opportunity to just share with you a visual of what each of our buildings will look like with the proper social distancing in place. Here's an example, as Mrs. Strasser talked about the desks. Plexiglass shields will be placed on each one of these desks, running both directions to ensure that all 4 of these students have plexiglass between them. At the intermediate school, Mr. Tripp had mentioned they have a series of different types of furniture, but any desks are socially distanced with a minimum of 3 feet distance, and then certainly any tables will also be fitted with the plexiglass as mentioned. At the high school, we traditionally just have desks with the exception of our science labs. And this would be an example of a room that is spaced out with the proper social distancing. And certainly in all of our buildings, specifically grades 3 through 12, masks will be an expectation throughout. However, we will allow for masks breaks because we do not necessarily have recess. But if students, let's say this classroom would like to go out into the courtyard, that's a visual right behind this picture here, they can go out to the courtyard, socially distance over 6 feet, take their masks off for a few minutes, and with class times being 90 minutes in length, with the blocking, that would allow a teacher to do a mask break potentially in the middle of class, and then students can return to the classroom to continue their education.
So in regards to the sanitization and transportation concerns that we've heard, to kind of address some of those things, we wanted to share what we have in place to keep everybody healthy. Every day, all day, we will be cleaning and sanitizing the buildings. This includes the custodians, teachers, and the students. We will frequently wash hands, and we will make a point to schedule those times as well. Some of our classrooms even have sinks in all of the classrooms, so we can actually wash hands right in the classroom with minimal disruption to student learning. We will also frequently clean the touch surfaces within the building and the restrooms as well. Our custodians will have a regular rotation that they will make sure that they are disinfecting any touch surfaces in the restrooms regularly. We've also learned our HVAC system has some pretty advanced features, something that's called a purge, where we are able to essentially suck out the air in our buildings and replace it with fresh air from the outside. We're also installing sanitization stations in the rooms and hallways to disinfect with sprays, wipes, sanitizer, and paper towels. And we will be building that in as routinely as possible. For transportation, we will disinfect all buses in between routes, and the ventilation system that we've been advised to follow is to make sure that we have a lot of air circulating, which could include windows down, so that we aren't driving around with closed windows and there's plenty of ventilation for the students. The requirements that we've been told to adhere to is 6 foot distance from the driver, and all students who ride a bus will need to wear a mask. We're also working with the State Patrol to install hand sanitizing stations. When students enter the bus, they can get a pump of disinfectant, and drivers will also be required to wear masks.
On this slide here, you can see the times for the school days. Before I go over this, I also want to say that as the students are coming into the building, we will have social distancing markers on the floors so that the students know exactly where they should be safely from other students. So you can see at CPS, we'll be opening the doors around 7:15 for the bus riders to come in. We want to make sure we get all those students to their classrooms before we open the doors for walkers and car riders. So we'll open the front door at 7:30. Tardy bell will ring at 7:45. Then in the afternoon, we will load buses first at 1:55, and then we have a staggered dismissal for our car riders and walkers, 2 o'clock for kindergarten and 2:05 for first and second. You can see the times there for CIS, 7:15 for bus riders, 7:35 for walkers and car riders, 7:45 tardy bell. 2:05 for buses will be dismissed, and then at 2:10, their car riders and pickup students will be dismissed and walkers. For the CMS, CHS, they will open the doors for bus riders at 8 o'clock, as well as walkers and car riders all at the same time. Tardy bell at 8:10. Bussers will be dismissed at 3:05, and car riders will be dismissed at 3. Again, like I said, we will have social distancing markers in all of the buildings, so when students are coming in, they know exactly where they should be walking in order to keep a safe distance between all of their fellow peers. This next slide is about the K-6. Again, I've mentioned some of this on morning drop-off. Bus riders will go straight to their classrooms. We also will be staggering how we unload the buses. At the primary building, we have 2 doors that they will be going into. I believe the 3-6 building, they have that as well. So we will make sure that we keep the social distancing that is required when we are bringing students into the hallway. And then we will have car riders and walkers come in at a different time, and they will report directly to their classrooms as well. One thing that I want to point out, the K-6, we may open the doors earlier depending on the flow of traffic with the bus riders. So at the beginning of the year, we're going to start off on this schedule, but we could open it a little bit earlier, and Mr. Tripp and I will make sure that we get that message out to all the parents if those times do change. So morning drop-off at the primary, you will come down Cherry Street. It's a one-way street. Then we do have a turn-in lane. We will have staff out there. Mrs. Stevens is usually out there. She has a stop sign. We ask that the cars pull all the way up to where she has the stop sign. And then we unload those cars and back to where the other duty person is standing. We unload those cars, and then we move them out, and we will reload and then unload more students and have them walk safely into the building, where there will be many staff members along the way to greet the students and make sure that they get to their classroom safely.
For morning drop-off at the intermediate school, parents can choose to drop their children off either in the front of the building, which is Arch Street, or in the rear of the building, which is Metzger Avenue. We ask that when you do drop your children off, that you pull up as far as possible to allow for proper traffic flow. I know it's very nice to make sure you drop your children off right at the door, but sometimes the traffic congestion doesn't allow for that. So make sure you pull up as far as possible. Morning drop-off, it does not matter which door the students enter, but in the afternoon, we do have specific areas to pick your children up.
At the 712 building, we will be, as already indicated, opening the doors at 8 o'clock. There'll be 4 entrances for students to enter through. The middle school main entrance, the double doors by our registration office, the high school main entrance, and the Hatton Gym lobby entrance. And at each one of those entrances, we will have grab-and-go breakfast, and students will be then expected to report directly to first period homeroom. And then what we will be doing is asking students, as they learn their schedules, to enter the door that makes most sense to getting to their classroom as quickly as possible. And so we are hoping that most middle schoolers will enter through the middle school entrance and the registration entrance, and most high schoolers will enter through the 2 high school entrances. And so as students learn their schedule, we're going to ask them to think about which entrance may be the closest for them, and utilizing the outside sidewalks as an avenue to travel to the door that makes the most sense. We will not be having the traditional cafeteria gathering for breakfast, so please make sure that you are dropping your students off at as close to 8 o'clock as possible, and not earlier, because we will not be able to open lobbies as we have in the past, and want to make sure that your students are not having to stand out in the elements.
afternoon pickup at the primary building will look just a little bit different. We will be loading buses first in the back of the building. Then our kindergarten students will come out in the front of the building. We have 2 parking lots at the front of the building off of Mill Street. Teachers will be bringing those students out. We will have designated spots. We ask that the parents stay in their car. Let the staff bring your child to you. This will help with the social distancing as well and help keep the flow of traffic moving. First graders will be dismissed out of the door closest to Cherry Street. For our returning parents, you know that is the door right there by the playground. The teachers will have designated spots along Cherry Street as well, and will get your child to you safely and quickly. Second grade parents, we are moving your pickup back to the bus parking lot at the back side of the building. So once the buses have moved out at 2 o'clock, we will load that up with second grade parents. Teachers will have a assigned spot, and they will bring your child to you as well.
Third grade pickup will occur in the bus parking lot, which also is our playground area. So parents, when you arrive to the school, if you arrive prior to students being dismissed, you will notice the buses are still there. So parents will need to wait in the football parking lot until the buses have been dismissed, at which time you're welcome to pull in the parking lot, stay in your car, and we will have designated areas for each teacher so that you may pick your child up and keep a steady flow of traffic moving. Fourth graders will be picked up in the front of the building by the white columns. Parents and guardians, make sure that, please maintain some appropriate social distancing while picking up your students. We will also have specific spots assigned for each classroom, so you will know where to anticipate your child will be every day, and we will communicate that as the beginning of the school year gets closer. Any congregating outside of your car in the parking lot is discouraged. Fifth and sixth grades, the pickup for fifth and sixth grade is not changing a whole lot. It will happen in the rear of the building on Metzger Avenue. You may enter from Allen Avenue by the old Worthington Elementary site. Parents and guardians, if you would get out of your car for whatever reason, please make sure you're keeping appropriate social distance, and congregating outside of that car is discouraged. But we will stagger the dismissal of the fifth and sixth graders so that we don't have all of them exiting the building at once. But if you just remain in your car and your child enters your car and then you pull away, it should go pretty seamlessly.
For the 712 building, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be releasing our walkers, drivers, and students with parents picking them up at 3 o'clock p.m. And I'm going to encourage you with your student to look at their schedule and determine which exit makes the most sense for them to be leaving the building through, as all exits from our facility will be usable for dismissal. And plan, if you are picking up your student, to meet them in a pre-designated location by you and your student. Bus riders will then be dismissed at 3:05 as soon as our buses have arrived, and we will allow all students to be done by 3:05.
As Mr. Ballantyne mentioned at the beginning, we do have an online learning option for those families that want their child to they don't want their child to attend the buildings at this time. We will be utilizing the Virtual Learning Academy curriculum. This is through Jefferson County ESC. This is Ohio Learning Standards, so that when at the end of the semester, if you decide that you want to transition back to school, it will be easier for them. We have changed the deadline. We now would like parents to have your child signed up by July 24th. We will be notifying all parents and giving you instructions after that date. We changed this deadline so that we can adequately prepare our in-class classrooms, as well as prepare the staff that will be working with our VLA students. We know that this online learning will probably start up later in August. Make sure, again, like I said, you sign your child up before July 24th. You can find the link on our district website. It is also located on our Facebook page as well. There will be support for your child if you choose this option. There will be a Chillicothe School District teacher assigned to groups of students. A Chromebook and some other materials will be provided. One thing we do want to let everyone know that students can work on lessons at any time. So mom and dad, if you work 7 to 3 and you feel like it's better for you to work on these lessons in the evening, that will be acceptable. Younger students will need support from home, and we will make sure that we are establishing times for when you will be picking up the Chromebook, books, etc. Look for all that information to come out towards the end of July, first week of August. You also can still sign up for lunch if you choose to go to the online learning. Mary Montgomery will be setting up a system so that we can deliver lunch to your child. So look for that information to come out as well. And one other note, high school students who plan to take AP honor classes will be able to do that through our Credit Flex option.
Right, so as we wrap up, I know that Nurse Natalie had one more comment about masks she'd like to share. So Natalie.
Yes, I just wanted to remind parents in general, all adults and children who are over the age of 2, who don't have any medical reasons that pose a risk for wearing a mask, should wear a mask anytime they're out in public. As a parent, the best thing you can do to help your children in school and really to help avoid another school shutdown is to make wearing a mask anytime you're out in public, make that a habit. Children learn by example, so you are going to show them that this is something that's important. So I wanted to encourage you right now to start practicing with your child, have them wear a mask at home, and especially when they're in public and that. So wearing a mask at school will be a smooth transition when school starts. Even our K-2 building, it's highly recommended that students wear a mask as well. So that's something you can do as parents to help with that transition as well. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Natalie. So as we just wrap up this presentation, I wanted to just make sure that you know that we are constantly monitoring the latest news and information from the Ohio Department of Health and the CDC. And at any point, these procedures are subject to change. And certainly our number one goal is the safety of our staff and students. So please continue to monitor our Facebook pages, our website, and make sure your final forms is up to date so that you're receiving the latest information. Our offices for secretaries will be reopening on July the 23rd. If you need to meet with somebody within our buildings, please make sure you call ahead. We would like to schedule those times to ensure that we do not have a large influx of people coming into our buildings at one time. But at any time, if you have questions or concerns, please make sure you contact us. We've put contact information on this slide. That is our board office. If you call that number, you can hit the 0 button, and it has a voice identified name directory, and you can ask to call any one of us, and it will connect you to our extensions. Here's our specific emails if you need to email us, and certainly we welcome either one that is easier for you. And lastly, we have listed our website specific to the COVID information. Please make sure you continue to monitor that as we update information. That is where all of it will go. So we appreciate your time today. Certainly, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call or send us an email, and we'd be happy to address any concerns or questions that you have. Thanks again. Enjoy the remainder of your summer, and we look forward to seeing everyone back in school on August 10th.